Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. Yeah, we're on volume 20 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2. I got my contacts back in, feeling a little bit better. It's really hot and humid outside, so my hair is like whatevs. But you know what? It's been a couple days since I finished volume 19, and I was like, oh, the manga's gonna be amazing. I'm so excited. I've read 8 volumes of Act 1 of Ace of the Diamond, and then I decided to hold off because I was like, oh, once I catch up with the manga, then I'm gonna have to wait like every 9 weeks before doing a volume reaction. So that's gonna be like 2 months. That sucks. So I guess in the meantime, I'll just catch up with the manga that I've missed. And so if you're a patron and you're on Discord, or if you are on my Twitter and you follow me on there, I'll probably have just updates as I go reading the manga after I catch up here. But I'm really excited because already we're seeing just all the extra stuff that's been brought about with the manga, and that's really exciting. So I'm going to be reading volume 20 today, which is chapters 175 to 183. I'm getting this off of Manga Decks because they have the English translation there, and that's what everybody on the Discord said they were reading. And so, yeah, I'm going to kind of do it like last time, where if I take notes, I want to go through chapter to chapter and read, and then take notes as I go, kind of like what I would do with the anime, and at the very end, come back and talk about all those notes and it in general. Right, so we've got Yakushi versus Ichidai Third, the rematch. I'm like, oh my god, KOSEI. I reread volume 19, chapters 169 to 174 before recording this, and man, just the mangaka TJ makes KOSEI look so soft in this volume. His expressions are so soft. It's really interesting because he comes across as like so hard in the anime, and the line work and everything on him is just kind of gentle. It's very different. It's very weird, right? Bug on me. An ant on me. I had an ant on me. I was like, what is this? I could see it in the camera and was like, is it a spider? Anyway, so that's staying in. Anyway, I read the volume 19, and yeah, KOSEI looks super soft in that. It's really good. And then Yakushi, the whole thing it still gets me that we get Raichi's mom and her leaving, which we kind of guessed that maybe the mom had left Coach Todoroki because they're so obsessed with baseball, but seeing it, and I'll be honest, I talked about in the Discord, seeing Coach Todoroki be so surprised that she left. Like, he was like, oh, you're leaving, and just being like, oh, and her being like, can't do it, and it's like, oh man. And Kelsey and them were saying in the Discord that the mom is really hated in the fandom. I don't know, I don't really hate a character seeing only one panel of them that we can't really tell much of them. I don't really want to say that I hate a character because of that, but it does suck that she left her child and her husband. I get she left her husband because he was too obsessed with baseball, and she's like, you're not devoting enough to our family, I can't do it. But her leaving her kid is really sad. And so Raichi just has his dad. It's like, sad days. But we were talking about it in the Discord, and I would eventually like to see TJ like show all the characters with their families. That would be really cool. I'd really like that. But like I said, it is scorching hot outside. I went outside a second ago. My hair is just done. It's so humid. And I'm like, I just need to have some Ace of the Diamond. That sounds like a good plan. So that's what we're going to do. But I've wasted enough time. We're going to read volume 20 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2 and see, this is basically going to be 3 episodes to see like what's going to happen in this Yakushi Ichidai Third game. I'm really sad because we're already to Ichidai Third versus Yakushi, and I want to see both these teams play Sato again in the tournament, so only one is going to. What the heck? So, I don't know. Everything seems to be in Ichidai's favor at this point, which I'm super bummed about because I really love Yakushi. So I'm like, how are they going to pull it off? And Tomobe is our pitcher, so how's our first-year boy going to do it? I guess we'll find out, right? So we're going to start Ace of the Diamond Act 2, Volume 20, Chapters 175 to 183 here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I'm having so much fun with this manga. You know what the sad part is? The sad part is this isn't animated yet. That's the sad part. I'm so floored by how much I've loved this Yakushi and Ichidai game so far. It's been such a good game. And these 2 volumes, 19 and 20 so far, have been so much fun. And of course, we're going to carry it over into 21. We got to carry it over because now the score is tied in the 8th inning. Terajima, oh my god, this was Raichi's volume. I don't know what the volume cover is for this yet. I'm probably going to look up a thumbnail when I'm done recording this, the thumbnail for volume 20, so that I can incorporate it into the thumbnail for this week. But I'm assuming Raichi is probably on the cover of this. He should be. This was Raichi's volume, and it hit me around the time of chapter 180. It started to hit me. I'm like, oh yeah, this whole volume has been building Raichi up and Yakushi's faith in Raichi and how much they really depend upon him. Like, Sanada's the ace, but honestly, Raichi may be the core of the team. And in so many ways, it's always been set up that way with Yakushi, because Raichi and his dad, like Todoroki bringing him into the fold and taking on the coaching job for Yakushi, and not only Raichi joining the team, but Mishima and Akiba coming with him, and like their little entourage like showing up to Yakushi, and Sanada getting on board because he wants to play with Raichi. It's like, oh my god. And there was a lot of Sanada Raichi shippable moments in this volume, let me tell you. I was like, oh, I was like, Terajima, if anybody can handle Raichi, it is Sanada Shunpei. And I freaking love it. Raichi is one of my favorite characters in this series. Not because he's like complex or layered. No, Raichi is simple. He's simple and pure, and he loves baseball. That's all he wants. He just wants to play baseball. He just is this lovable guy who is this terrifying shark on the field and this little squishy teddy bear off the field that's so shy. And he's just so simple. Like, he just wants to face the best pitchers in the world. And I love Coach Todoroki. He's probably like my top 3 coach. And he's just like, I want my son to not have to worry. And he's like, that's right, Raichi. He's like, get competitive. You'll see all kinds of pitchers the better you get. And it's like, and Raichi doesn't really have an ego. That's the thing too. Raichi's not a diva. He's like the polar opposite of a diva. He's not diva-ish at all. He's super simple in what he likes. And he doesn't have an ego. He just wants to go out and do what he loves best. Like, that's all there is to it. It's so simple for him. And there's not an ego or any like ulterior motive. And that kind of like just raw drive is what gives Yakushi a lot of its momentum. And so it's like, man, Raichi as a 3rd year is going to be terrifying. Terrifying. So I did take notes. We need to talk about this. My handwriting's pretty awful on him. But man, Raichi in this volume, KOSEI, Sanada, Hoshida, and then Hoshida or Shino. They spell the name a little bit differently in these volumes, the translation. Some say Hoshida, some say Hoshino, Hoshan. And then obviously Mishima finally getting his due. Oh my god, that run to first. We'll talk about that. Man, what a play to secure the tie. And they still have an out to give. It's not over yet. I mean, I don't know if KOSEI, we'll talk about KOSEI, but man, I love this game so much. I love it. And we'll talk about Sawamura reflecting on this game too. I'm going to be curious if Sawamura, when he hears that they've tied it up, that Raichi and Sanada and Mishima tied it up. Because I feel like Sawamura, it's funny because we've set up this kind of like triangle of the most unlikely friends in this series, where you have Sawamura and he's friends with Raichi and KOSEI. I've said it before in previous reactions, but I've said it on the Discord, I would be all about an OVA where Raichi and Sawamura and KOSEI end up on a road trip. It'd be the weirdest damn thing, because there's a part of, it's funny, Sawamura is kind of this middle ground. He's kind of like the connector between Raichi and KOSEI. And it's this weird triangle, right? Because you have KOSEI, who is the genius pitcher. He's super tactical. He's always thinking about like the conditions and what needs to be met, like what he can do. He's always thinking of strategies and different things. He's very analytical about baseball on the mound. And then you have Raichi, who's like pure instinct and just this raw feral energy, right? But Raichi and KOSEI are pretty similar because Raichi's not dumb. That's the thing. Off the field, we can debate it, but on the field, Raichi's not dumb about baseball. Raichi knows Raichi is as obsessed with baseball as Sawamura and KOSEI are. And he's like, okay, he's like, I just have to feel it. He's like, I don't look at it, just feel it. He's probably going to do something like this. Like, Raichi's not dumb. He kind of has this intuition, this natural instinct for baseball. So there's a little bit of a connection between KOSEI and Amahisa. But the connector really between those two, who seem like such unlikely people, like you'd never see them being able to talk to one another is Sawamura, because Sawamura kind of has aspects of both Raichi and Amahisa. Sawamura on the outside seems like Raichi. He has this feral sunshine energy, and everybody's like, you're so loud. And Sawamura's like, I've just got lots of optimism, like Raichi. But on the inside, Sawamura is thinking about baseball in terms like Amahisa, where he's trying to strategize with the numbers, with all of his pitches. He's like, how can I use this pitch against this pitcher? And he watches all the game footage over and over again. So Sawamura is analytical with baseball. He really is. And that's what I love about his character, is that he is layered like that. But he kind of brings these aspects of both Amahisa and Raichi together in really interesting ways. And he's kind of like that middle ground between them. So the trio of them makes sense being friends. They have just enough in common between one another that it works. But I find it fascinating that Sawamura this whole time, and we'll talk about it in the chapters, that he's been wanting to know who's going to win, because I feel like Sawamura is rooting them both on. He wants to play Raichi and pitch against him, but he also wants to play against KOSEI, and he's like, okay, and he's been talking to KOSEI about these pitches. So, also for the record, I like the dynamic of KOSEI and Sawamura talking versus Mei and Miyuki. Because Mei and Miyuki are such freaking trolls. Like, they were like Miyuki trying to give them the Trojan horse for this pitch because Mei's such a diva. And Mei's like, we don't want to give away our secrets. Amahisa doesn't care. Amahisa gave away a huge secret to Sato. Amahisa's like, hey, Sawamura, here's this pitch I've been working on. Isn't this cool? Like, he's been describing it to Sawamura, who's going to be their possible opponent. And Amahisa doesn't care. He's like, I don't, whatever. We're going to pitch it against them, so who cares if they know what it is? They're not going to be able to bat against it. There's that little arrogance there that I kind of like. It's fascinating, but I like that KOSEI's like, we're just friends talking. Like, Mei, I feel like, would overanalyze and be like, you're going to use it against us, and then make a big deal out of it. And KOSEI's like, I don't care. It's fine. We're just talking online. You know? That's a big difference between them as pitchers. I've really come to like KOSEI's character quite a lot in this series. I really have. Like, he's one of those people that's like an acquired taste. Like, I can see why if you don't like KOSEI, I get it, because he is like an acquired taste. But I'm like, I would probably be friends with KOSEI in real life. That's the thing. I would not be friends with Mei. Mei, I love diva characters. But in real life, people that are divas like Mei, they're a little too much for me. So I'm like, in the fictional world of a series, I'm like, oh, that's fun, but I don't know if I could hang with Mei. I'd be like, you're a bit much. But KOSEI's brand of weirdness, I'm like, I could probably hang with that. I could deal with that. Yeah, okay. And we'll talk about Hoshida with that too here in a second. But his character's grown on me a lot, and just I've loved this game, watching Yakushi and Raichi, and then face KOSEI and face off. It's been such a good match. And Todoroki and is it Tanaki? I always forget the coach for Ichidai Third's name. I forget him. I'm just like, the boy coach. Like, they're two of my favorite coaches. So I'm like, this has just been a really, really, really good matchup. But okay, so let's get into these chapters. Hoshida, I love it. See, here's the thing. KOSEI has his own brand of weirdness, and his team has kind of accepted that. They're like, yeah, you're the ace. You're really good. You're just kind of odd, you know? But I feel like Hoshida relates to KOSEI a lot, because Hoshida's kind of odd. He talks to his bat, but he talks to his bat at the plate. And I love that the catcher for Yakushi is like, Kiba's like, what are you doing? I love it. He's like, what's going on? And so, and KOSEI's pretty blunt about all that. He's like, score some runs. He's a jerk. KOSEI is a jerk, but he's not mean-spirited about it. That's the thing. He is kind of a jerk, and he's super blunt, but there's nothing malicious about what he says. There's no snake bite to his words. When Mei gives an insult, there's venom there, right? There's some venom with Mei. But with KOSEI, there's no venom. He's just like, nah, here it is. Here's this boulder. I'm just going to throw it at you and dodge, I guess. You know, that sets his attitude, right? And so it's 1-0. They managed to score in the third inning. And Raichi catching that third out right off the bat. Oh, the way that TJ drew that. Oh my gosh. I am sad with this reaction that when I was recording, I had the little box fitting the pages. I was not counting on there being like the giant double spreads like there were. So for the next volume, I'm going to have to expand that. So if we get a double spread, it'll show up, because I was a little bit sad. I was like, oh damn, I didn't get all that in the box that I was recording with. But Raichi catching that third out, oh my gosh, he was like on such an adrenaline high, and him jumping, which has kind of been foreshadowed from back in previous seasons where Raichi's jumped up and caught the ball. So shouldn't have been surprising, but it was such a well-drawn panel and so good. And he's so hyped up, he's even trying to tag the second out, and Sanada's like, we've already got 3 outs, Raichi, we're good. Oh my God. We're going to talk about the Sanada Raichi moments. So like my shipper heart was fed. My shipper self was fed on this day. And so KOSEI talks about how he's willing to be the bad guy. He's like, being the cunning guy and doing all this stuff may make me kind of a jerk and the bad guy, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I like that KOSEI's like, I don't care if I'm the bad guy as long as we win. He's like, doesn't matter to me. And he talks about how a lot of times it's easy for teams when they score a run that they're so high on that adrenaline. It kind of comes back to bite him what he says at the start of this. He says, sometimes when a team like earns runs, they end up giving them up later on because they get too cocky. And he's like, that's not going to happen with me. And then it kind of happens with him at the end of this volume. It's like, oh, he does kind of get a little careless. And it's interesting. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But third inning, 1-0. I really like that we cut back to Sato. We cut back to Sato twice in this to catch up what's going on. And Sawamura thinking about the gyro spin, the secret pitch. He's wondering, he's like, it's 1-0. And Sato's like, oh my gosh, Yakushi's being held off. And Sawamura's like, I wonder if it's that secret pitch. Like he's just thinking about it, right? And God, striking Raichi out on it, like just, again, this was Raichi's volume, and Raichi, the first 3 at-bats getting struck out. And he's like, It reminds me a lot of the game that I saw, the MLB game that I saw. There was a character, Morel from the Cubs, and he struck out 3 times. And then in the 8th inning, he actually managed to get a double. And it was like, oh, wow. It's the same thing with Raichi. It was kind of crazy, right? That parallel. So it happens. But I like that Raichi, he never gives up throughout this entire volume, and he never lets it affect him. That is one thing that I love about his character, and SANADA takes note of it, and the team takes note of it, that Raichi is never, he's not deterred. Like, him getting struck out, at first Amahisa was like, oh, are you going to be defeated by that first strikeout? It's too early in the game for that. But Raichi doesn't get upset. He gets hungry, and he gets excited. He's like, what was that pitch? I've never seen that pitch before. I want to see it again. Like, he gets so amped up, and Amahisa's like, that's what I wanted to see. That's the reaction I wanted. He's like, I want a challenger. Like, Amahisa's like, I want to take on a challenger. And so it's so good. I'm just like, I love that Raichi was not let down by that performance. He was just like, we're only in the 3rd inning. I'm going to go up to bat again with that. He's like, he got so excited. So they call it the Sly Slider, which I like the Sly Slider. I like it better than Slutter. Slutter sounds dirty, which it is a dirty pitch, so I guess that's why they call it that. It is quite nasty. But I like Sly Slider. Sly Slider fits Amahisa's personality quite well. I like that because it does. It starts out like as a slider, but it's kind of like a fastball, but it's got a curve to it. It's a vertical cutter, as Koshu says. I like that Koshu, we find out more and more about Koshu, that when he tells Ray and Nabe about the MLB and the MPB using it, it's like Koshu keeps up with all of his baseball knowledge. So that's good to know about that. But the 3rd inning to finish. And so I am sad that Tomobe came out so soon, but it needed to happen. Like, Sanada needed to come out. Tomobe did a really good job the first 3 innings for being a first-year pitcher. He only held him to 1 run, but it's like KOSEI was getting on his game. KOSEI was getting revved up, and Todoroki's like, I don't want us to risk any more runs. He's like, which is such a stark contrast, right? Because at the beginning of this game, in the last volume, they were like, oh, we can give up. Tomobe was making the comment being like, our coach said we could give up 3 runs, but I don't want to do that. They've only given up 1, and they're already kind of in a panic. So that shows you how seriously they are suddenly taking this match against Ichidai Third. So, but I understand why Sanada came in. Man, Sanada coming in, Ichidai Third, the coach, he really thought that they were up against a wall. He's like, oh, they're bringing in their ace pitcher in the 3rd inning already. He's like, they could have brought in Raichi, which I'm like, have you watched the games with Raichi pitching? No. I was like, they were not going to bring in Raichi for this game. No. Not against Ichidai Third. Absolutely not. No. Although they did do it before, so I guess that's where he was getting that from. But I was like, nah, the Yakushi's grown. And I don't know if Ichidai Third quite realizes until the end of this volume how much Yakushi has grown. But they have. So they've kind of learned from their lessons. They're like, we can't be reckless in this game. It's too important for that. So he's like, they didn't bring out Akiba or Raichi or Mishima to pitch. So that must mean that they're going to bring out Sanada, so they're up against a wall. But I'm like, I don't think Yakushi was up against a wall. They were panicking, but I don't think they were up against a wall yet. And so, but yeah, Sanada, he proves he just needed 1 pitch, 1 out to change the gears. And it's like, that's all he needed. And Coach Todoroki's like, I love you. I'm serious. I would not be surprised if Todoroki's like, do you really want to keep the last name Sanada? Are you glued to it? Do you want to be adopted into our family? I will let that happen. Todoroki loves Sanada, and Raichi loves Sanada, and Sanada loves them. So I'm like, we don't get a lot of background on the outside characters and their home life and anything, but I'm like, I wonder if Sanada just didn't have much of a home life, and so the Todorokis kind of became a second family. I like to think that in my heart, just a wee bit. I love that I love you. There was something written under Sanada's hat. There was something written under the brim of his hat. You could barely see it. And I can't remember if it's something that previous seasons have talked about and referenced, or if that's like a foreshadowing that Terajima is going to have him take off the hat and read something under, if it's going to be like this big tear-jerking inspirational moment later. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there was something under the bill of his cap, and I don't know if it was just something standard or if there was a message under it or what the deal was. I don't want to be spoiled if it's something we don't already know, but if it's something we're going to find out later, I don't want to be spoiled, but that's interesting if we're going to see that or not, or if it's anything important. Maybe it's not. And so then we go to Amahisa Boy, the coach there, talking about he had, when Sanada was up to pitch all of the batters for Ichidai Third, he did the little gesture with the little bang bang gesture with his fingers, and the whole chapter about the 2 fingers, just talking about like how to grip the bat a certain way and how to handle Sanada's pitches, right? And so, but it doesn't really work. Sanada gets on his game and he does really well. And I love that Sanada looks over to Raichi and he's like, everybody's doing it for Raichi. And the funny thing is, Raichi's such a cinnamon bun. Raichi doesn't know that they're doing it for him. He's just like, hey, I'm here to bat. He doesn't get it. And everybody's like, no, we're here to make sure that our team, as well as you, Raichi, go to Koshin again. It's like, it's so cute. But he says that he's like, Yakushi style, we're just rough and wild. And that's how we're going to be. That's how we're going to handle it. And I'm like, rough and wild is absolutely Yakushi style. At one point, Todoroki's like, we don't have a plan. he's like, we don't have this big strategy. We're just going to go out and hit the ball. That's what we do. I kind of love that. I love that Yakushi is they're one of the most genuine teams. They're not underhanded in any way. There's no like dark and dirty strategy with Yakushi. There's no like underhanded, like we're going to play dirty sort of thing. If I play dirty, Yakushi's like, no, we're literally going to get dirt all over us because we're working so hard. Like, that's what I love about Yakushi. They're just so simple and genuine. And that rough and wild attitude, I freaking love it. So then we have the idea that we have this comparison where Sanada's talking about how he's like, we're going to take down these elite schools. Because, yeah, Yakushi is just this crazy public school that doesn't have hardly any funding. Like, last year, they barely had enough players to make a roster. And they had, like, bare bones equipment. Like, they're the opposite of Sato. They have no, like, big sponsorships or alumni association or anything or foundation that keeps them funded. They're not a baseball school. They're just a school with a baseball team. But they did well last year, so here's the thing. Doing well for Yakushi and getting big time donations was getting 3 pitching machines, which is a big deal. I'm from a very rural school. That would be a huge deal. But for a school like Sato, they're probably like, oh, we replace our pitching machines every year. Like, it's just standard issue, right? It's nothing special. But for Yakushi, getting 3 pitching machines was like such a big deal to them. They're like, we don't have like a shelter, a batting shelter or anything special yet, but these pitching machines, they're a step, you know? So they're basically the David and Goliath. They are the David in this situation, even as strong as they are, versus Ichidai Third, who's like a Goliath powerhouse school. And I love that Sanada's like, we're going to drag them off their high horse and bring them down to our level to play in the dirt with us. And I'm like, okay. And then even KOSEI later on talks about, he's like, oh, these teams that want to be giant killers. Okay. Like, it's that, you know, that mentality that KOSEI is like, so what if we're an elite school? We worked our asses off to get here. We deserve that title. That's kind of what we do. So you can I like that we see it from both perspectives, because you have schools like Seido, Inashiro, Ichidai Third that are the powerhouse prestigious schools, but we see that they work really hard to get that title. Like, they didn't just waltz up and say, yeah, we're an elite school, and didn't have to earn it, right? But so you see that angle from it, but then you also see Yakushi's angle being like, yeah, we're underdogs, but we work hard too, and we work with our bare bones materials to get where we are. So it's cool that we see it from both perspectives, and neither are wrong. It's just fun to see that rivalry develop between these two schools in the moment about that. So yeah, Coach Todoroki, I like that he's like, this is stupid. Why am I waiting until a player on my team gets me fired up? He's like, I'm the coach, damn it. I should be fired up from the start. So he gets all fired up and gives a speech about telling his team not to worry about the slider, the special slider that KOSEI uses. He's like, just get fired up and let's go. And it's appropriate that the chapter is called Thermography, chapter 179. And God, I love, or it might not be 179, but Thermography. And I love that it's KOSEI that gives the title. He's like, their team's heating up a degree or two. He's like, somebody should research thermography about this. I'm like, he's just thinking of everything else during the baseball game. It's ridiculous. But all of the little gestures between Sanada and Raichi in these chapters, like when Sanada gets 2 outs and Raichi's like this and Sanada's like that, and when they each get 1 out and they're both like, and he's like, yeah, freaking adorable. I ship Raichi and Sanada so hard. And it's the weirdest thing, because it's like, they would be so weird as a ship, because Raichi's much too innocent. Raichi wouldn't know how to do anything romantic. I feel like Sanada would kind of be like chill and cool, like a jock boyfriend that would be really cool, and he'd be like, you want to go on a date? And Raichi would be like, what? And he's like, there's bananas. He's like, okay. Like, Raichi would just be this clueless puppy dog running around, you know, but it's so precious. And then when the one guy on Ichidai Third gets out and KOSEI's like, where's my promised runs? Like, which Hoshina gets him back. You know, he does that like he promised. But KOSEI's so blunt and such a jerk sometimes. But it's endearing. I like it. I like it a lot. And then Sanada saying, our Raichi. We got to do this for our Raichi. Like, the whole team, they want to carry Raichi to Koshin. Because I think the whole team, like, when Raichi was asked in Act 2 to give, like, the words, to say the words to his third years, like, to the final words, and Raichi's just, like, blushy and doesn't know what to say. Like, I feel like his teammates, they all know how Raichi is off the field. They know how pure and innocent he is. But they know how much he loves baseball and wants to help the team. And they just want him to experience that the same that they do. It's like, oh my gosh, make me cry. It's so sweet. So we cut to the top of the 6th. Hoshino, he helps get that promised run to KOSEI however he can. Talks to the bat, and he's like, it'll be your turn next time. Like, I love the quirks that these players have, especially for, like, the opponent teams. And for somebody like Hoshida, who's, like, just not a main central, he's not like Carlos or May, but he's, like, one of the main ones of Ichidai Third. I love that, just that little quirk that he has where he talks to his bat. But so it's 2-0 in the 6th inning, which is dangerous waters, right? And so at that point, we cut back to Seido. And I love that Sawamura is oddly quiet. He's like, Yakushi and them haven't scored against Amahisa. He's like, how is this pitch? And you could see the gears turning in his head. And he was like, Miyuki, what about this gyro spin? And Miyuki's like, you know what the word gyro means? I love that Miyuki's like, what were you thinking about Sawamura? What's going on? It's great, right? I love that. And so I'm like, okay, Sawamura, are you going to try to learn the spin? Are you going to try to learn the pitch that KOSEI has? Indeed. That practice, he wants to know about it, and Miyuki being constantly surprised. But I like that Miyuki seems like he's in a better mood in the manga from the game against Yugasora. I like that he seems like he's in a better mood around Sawamura. He's less tense. Which there were a couple panels in volume 19 that Miyuki was giving such a soft look over to Sawamura. Like, he's like, you'll be all right. I liked that a lot. So we cut to the 8th inning of this matchup, and it's pretty terrifying at this point that it's still 0-2 for Yakushi to be 0-2. And Ichidai, SANADA, he's starting to get a little tired. You can see him in the dugout with the sweat coming down his face. He's starting to get a little fatigue on him, which he's still recovering from that injury. But man, I think my favorite part of this whole volume is from the 8th inning on, where we see Raichi in the back meditating with the bat, like just holding it up, thinking about it, because Raichi's whole thing is Raichi feeling the ball, right? He doesn't want to use the pitching machine because the ball doesn't have breath. It's not real, right? It's not real. And so him just sitting in the back meditating, like thinking about, I want to hit his ball. I want to do it. I want to hit his pitch. And then I love that the comment in the chapter was like, Raichi sharpening his talons. Like, yeah. And then the opening chapter starts out, the one right after it, starts out with Raichi sitting there and Coach Todoroki sitting in front of him. That show of father and son. Because, yeah, back in the last volume, Todoroki, Raizo was like, yeah, my wife left us because we were too obsessed with baseball. And he's like, it's been worth it. And so it's like just this moment of father and son where he's like, he knows that his son can do it. It's like, and Masada getting walked, like that persistence. He was the 9th hole, and he's like, I'm going to make sure that Akiba and Todoroki get up to bat. He's like, we got to get Todoroki up to bat. Like, I love that. It reminds me of Raichi as a batter, reminds me of how Sato views Miyuki in a lot of ways. Because when you think about it, Zono's like, Kuromochi and Haruichi are like, we've got to get to where Miyuki can come up to bat. And Zono's like, I got to follow through behind Miyuki and make his batting worthwhile. So there's that kind of reverence towards Raichi as a batter that Sato kind of gives to Miyuki, which is interesting. But yeah. And so Masuda gets walked, which was surprising. But then we find out that KOSEI is starting to get a little bit tired. And the coach noting, and I'll talk about it here down below, the coach noting that KOSEI's, we're in the 8th inning, he's pitched the entire game, and he's starting to get a little bit fatigued, right? Just a little bit. And so, man, Akiba almost getting out, but manages to get to second base. He almost makes it to first base, but he gets out, but Masuda makes it to second base. And so there's one out, and just Todoroki, that wide shot of him coming out, because Todoroki's a pretty short guy. Todoroki is not tall like Furuya. He's pretty short. But there are times where I forget how, as many swings as Todoroki has done, and as much exercise Todoroki is like this short little muscle guy. Like that wide shot of him like walking out to the field, and you see like just how muscular Todoroki is. It's like, oof. Yeah, Raichi is short, but he is stout. And everyone cheering for him. And it's just the whole crowd there rooting Todoroki on. And the thing of it is, Raichi doesn't even notice. He doesn't notice the crowd at all. He's so focused on the pitcher and the ball. Again, that's why I love him. Like, there's not an egotistical bone in that kid's body. There is not 1 ounce of him that is like just this proud, like, I'm the best batter ever. He's like, no, Raichi never says I'm the best batter there is. He's like, I just want to take down this pitcher and hit his balls. That's it. It's so simple. But I love it. I love how much the crowd gets going for Todoroki. And then SANADA being like, let's take him down. You and I, we're going to get him. We're going to make Akiba's out worth it. I'm like, the support that they have for each other, like Raichi being like, not a senpai, and being all about him, and SANADA being like, I'm playing for you. It's like, I just want SANADA and Raichi to go pro and end up on the same team. That's all I want. I don't know if SANADA would go pro. That's honestly, I don't know if we've talked about this in the Discord. Raichi's gonna go pro. Like, I'm fully convinced Raichi and Mima, they're gonna go pro as batters. I'm absolutely convinced. There's no way they can't be. But now SANADA, know. I could see SANADA going to a university first. SANADA kind of reminds me a little bit about like Chris, kind of in a way. It's hard to explain, but he reminds me a little bit like Chris, and maybe it's the fact that he's been doing all the therapy on his legs, that maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's made me think of Chris. But, I mean, I could see Chris going pro because of Animal and all of that, and because Chris is that good of a catcher, and once he gets back to top form. But I could see SANADA going pro, but I could also see him going the university route. Raichi's not very book smart, so... He's not. He's relying solely on his talents. And Totoro and his dad knows it. His dad's like, I know my kid ain't smart, but he can swing a bat. And that's what's going to get him to go far in life, doing what he loves. So, yeah. I just want SANADA and Raichi to end up on the same pro team together. Or the same team after high school in general. That's all I want. But, man, everybody wants Raichi to do well. And I kind of love how Kosei's like, they all want to be giant killers. And I like that how Kosei's like, look at them all cheer, let's shut them up. It's like, it's so weird, because if the lines Kosei said there came out of somebody like May, it would be super, super cocky and like, but the fact that it's coming out of Kosei, it has a different tone to it that I really like. So it's like, okay, all right. And so it just, at this point, Kosei's coach notes that in 8 innings, he's only pitched 87 pitches, which is really good. Like, he shouldn't be tired because of the pitch count, because that's actually a really good pitch count. But what's making him tired is that he's exerting himself on a pitch that his body is not used to. Like, the slider is something that's new. His body hasn't adjusted to it. It's something that's exhausting him just because it's something he's not used to having in his repertoire. So it's like, okay. And so it makes sense that we're in round four of Todoroki and versus Kosei. And I love that at this point, Kosei acknowledges that their battery is super cool-headed. Like Koshu acknowledges it. I have my notes here. Koshu acknowledges that the battery between Kosei and his catcher is extremely cool-headed. And I think that Koshu is like taking notes from that, being like, wow, their communication is really on point. And their catcher, because yeah, Ichidai Third's catcher, he never gets freaked out about anything. He's super chill, which he needs to be, because Kosei is chill but also can be unpredictable. So that's really cool that Koshu notices that. But man, in 2 pitches, Raichi is cornered with these 151-mile-an-hour curveballs. It's like, oh my god. But I love that we touch the moment he hit the foul, I thought it was a home run. The moment he hit the foul ball and it went into foul territory, I was like, no, like, it was so close. I was like, come on, Todoroki, you can do this. And so I love that the coach in this moment, he's like, Raichi, don't overthink this. He's like, Raichi, thinking is not your specialty. You're an instinct animal. Rely on that. He's like, don't overthink this, and don't swing for your team. It's too much pressure. Swing for yourself. And that's the craziest thing, because this series has all been about, you know, doing it for the team goal and doing things for the team. But it does acknowledge, just like becoming an ace, as we see that Raichi struggles with when he was pitcher back in Act 2, we see that the problem is that sometimes there's all this added pressure. Once you add the team goals and the team's ambitions on top of your own, sometimes that pressure's too much and it can really drag you down. And Raizo's like, look, I know my son, him thinking about himself and just batting for himself, it's selfish, but it's not. Because he's like, my son is not this egotistical person where it's all about me. No, not at all. Raichi's not like that. Him telling Raichi to swing for himself, yeah, it's textbook definition of being selfish, but it's really not, because Raichi's he's not pitching really for himself. He's not batting for himself. He's just doing what feels natural for him. Raichi doesn't have this mentality where he thinks he's carrying the team. That's not it at all. He's doing things for the team, but Raizo's like, don't put that pressure on yourself. Just do what comes naturally to you. Bat the way that you love, and everything else will follow suit. It kind of reminds me, in the craziest of ways, I'm watching Yuri on Ice at the same time, and Victor, in episode 10 of that series, Victor, who is Yuri's coach, for lack of better words, tells Yuri, he's like, the best kind of skating you could do is that's for yourself. He's like, if you feel good on the ice, you'll do well. If you can skate the way that you think you can best, everything else will fall into place. And that's kind of what Coach Todoroki tells Raichi. He's like, just bat the way that you can to the best of your ability. Don't worry about us. We've got this. We can handle things, but just bat the way that you want to, and everything else will fall into place. And that's what ends up happening. That pressure, he takes it off, and he's like, swing for yourself. And KOSEI, anytime that battery starts to shake heads and not communicate well, you know something's going to happen, because the catcher's like, okay, what if we do this? And KOSEI's like, nah. He's like, what about this? Nah. And here's the thing, KOSEI overthinks it. And he's like, no, I'm going to follow out with my signature move and get them all here. And Raichi, maybe he hits it. He's like, I want to go back to my signature move. And Raichi, he seems so innocent, but he's kind of a genius too. He was waiting for that one pitch, and he feels it, and he just knocks it out. And it's not a home run, but it gets him on base. And I like how KOSEI's he's not deterred by it at all. He admits defeat. He's like, you know, it could have been a home run. We're just lucky it wasn't that. He's like, he's just that good of a batter. I'll concede defeat to Raichi because he's that good. You know, a genius batter versus a genius pitcher, right? But and Todoroki, when Raichi, it's funny because Coach Todoroki's making this big, you know, monologue about his son, and meanwhile Raichi's just like looking on base, like he's not even thinking about what just happened. He's just thinking about the next moment. And Raizo's like, that's it. Get competitive. He's like, be competitive and realize that these are good pitchers, and the better you get, the better the team will do, and the better we do, the more pitchers you'll encounter that are better and better. He's like, that's what you want, right? It's like, so good. I love it. Because Raichi, I don't think of Raichi inherently as competitive like some of the other players are. Raichi's more like, he just wants to compete with the best pitchers, but it's not like, it's the strangest thing, right? But I love it. He's like, you'll keep growing as a batter the more pitchers you face. And I'm like, that's why I want Yakushi to win so bad, because I want Raichi and Sawamura to face each other again. It's what I want. And so, but here's the thing. KOSEI got careless. He was like, the opposite happened. KOSEI wasn't in a panic, but he was so chill about it that he got careless. He was like, okay, well, we couldn't do anything about Raichi. It's fine. But now I got SANADA up to bat. No worries. They'll be fine. We'll strike him out. And he just got a hair careless, and SANADA took that momentum, and just that whole thinking you're safe. You can't think you're safe in baseball, right? And SANADA just gets the hit and manages to and they make a note that KOSEI is not good with seeing runners. He doesn't pay attention, which is a funny thing, because that kind of makes KOSEI and SANADA have a similarity, because we've talked about in previous seasons that SANADA doesn't really pay attention to the runners either. Neither does KOSEI. They're not ones that like pick off people. So Raichi's manages to make the steal and get to third, and SANADA manages to make it to second. So that's interesting, that KOSEI and SANADA have that in common. But then we get up to Mishima. And if I'm being honest, I was really worried. I was like, we made all this big deal about Raichi finally getting a hit off of KOSEI's pitch. And when SANADA came up to base, I was like, okay, they've only got one out. I think SANADA will get a hit off of this, because as soon as KOSEI started talking about taking down SANADA, I'm like, oh, you're going to underestimate him and get a little careless, and that's going to let SANADA get on base. But if I'm being honest, my dogs are going crazy, of course. If I'm being honest, I thought Mishima was going to get out. I was like, Terajima's going to do what he always does and pull the rug out from under us, and Mishima's going to get out, and it's going to be them on base. But I was like, who was up after them? I was trying to think who was up after Mishima, and I can't think of who it was. We'll find out next volume who's going to be up next. Maybe it's Tomobe. I can't remember. But it'd be cool if it was Tomobe being up to bat next. Maybe it is. Maybe Tomobe is fifth hole. He might be. And that would be a cool thing, because now it's tied, right? Now the game is tied, and SANADA's on third. So if Tomobe came up and got a hit and let them take the lead, that would be pretty huge, right? that would be huge. And then it would be all on SANADA. So that might be cool. That might be cool in the next volume if we have Tomobe coming up to bat. Because we've set up in this series, we've set up Tomobe and SANADA having a relationship, like a friendship. So that'd be cool to see like this first year pitcher and third year pitcher having a moment. Maybe that'll happen in the next volume. But yeah, Mishima coming up and he reminds me a lot of a character in Slam Dunk that plays for Shohoku's rival that has, he's the player, he's got like a crazy funky hairdo, but he likes being praised. I can't think of his name, it's gonna kill me. I may look that up while I'm thinking about it because that's gonna drive me crazy not knowing. Oh, okay, so it's for Ryonen's team. It's for Ryonen's team, and it's Fukuda. It's Fukuda. I was like, it's going to drive me crazy not thinking of him. It's Fukuda who plays for Ryonen. Fukuda in that series, he's all about getting praised. Like, he just feeds off of it. Mishima's kind of the same thing, right? But he's become this fourth hole, and he's like, I'm going to be the one that they depend on. And I like that Coach Todoroki establishes that there's been this growing rivalry between Mishima and Raichi, that he wants to like be as good of a batter as Raichi, that Raichi's inspired him. I'm like, that's kind of cool that we've got this like little pseudo rivalry in Yakushi. That's fun times. Kind of like Furuya and Sawamura a little bit. But him like giving it his all and Todoroki being like, run like your life depends on it. And he manages to make it safe. And manages to get it to where Raichi can get home. Like my heart. So now it's tied. Now the game is tied. The game is tied between the two of them, and we're at the 8th inning, about to be in the 9th inning. I'm like, and there's only one out. There's only one out, and the game's tied. It's anybody's ball game at this point, and I'm like, oh my god. So I'm so excited. But this was Raichi's volume, which of course I loved because Raichi's one of my faves. And SANADA's volume and Yakushi just striking back. So good. So good. But yeah, so I really loved this volume and these chapters. They were great. And I'm really, really excited for volume 21 now. I don't know how long we have to wait. I don't know. The game not being over yet. But here's the thing. There's a part of me that wants to instantly read volume 21. And there's a part of me that does not, because I don't want this game to end, and we're already in the 8th inning. So you know the game is going to end in the next volume. It's going to. And we're going to find out if Amahisa or if SANADA is going to advance their team to the next round. I'm scared because I want both teams to go. On the one hand, I want Amahisa to face. On the one hand, here's the thing. I want Amahisa to face against May, but on the other hand, I want Raichi and them to face against May. But at the end of the day, I just know that Inashiro's going to be in the finals. You just know it's going to happen. They're setting up that rematch. So I'm like, I don't want either team to lose in the next volume, but then I don't want either team to go up against Inashiro. So, and maybe they won't. Maybe they'll have to face Sato if that's the case. If Sato wins and goes on, they'll have to face them first. So, it's just, Terajima, why do you do this to us? Why do you do this to us? But this is a really good volume, so I'm going to be excited to talk about it on the Discord with y'all if you're a patron. So if not, I'll be excited to talk to you about in the comments below, because this was a really, really good volume. So I'm curious to know y'all's thoughts. This is great. I've loved this game so far. It's been a lot of fun. I can't believe that eventually we're going to get it animated. There's so many moments. The moments between SANADA and Raichi, the moment of KOSEI debuting this new pitch. You know it's going to be animated amazingly. The moment of Raichi grabbing the ball in midair. The moment of Mishima sliding to first. The moment of Raichi coming out of the dugout. I just want to see it animated so badly. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'm excited to hear your comments down below. Please no manga spoilers. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. And I'll be back really soon with volume 21 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2. Bye.